And we are live.
Hi.
Welcome, everybody, live at the Hive, episode 187. I am Dan Nadelko.
I'm Stacey DeSantis.
Oh, there they go. Rookies.
And I'm Paige Gervais.
There you go.
A client just texted me right when I was supposed to say something. So I was like, oh.
You're like,
All right. Welcome, everybody, to episode 187 of Live at the Hive. And today we will be talking about 11 steps you can take to build an effective website for your business. So, obviously, web development is a huge industry these days, but we're going to go a little bit more beyond that into building an effective website for your business, the steps that we take and the steps that we think everybody should take in terms of building an effective business marketing website. Applies to e-commerce stores as well. And there's a lot of hot takes on this type of a process, but we're going to walk you through the steps and show you some examples so that your website can be as effective as humanly possible and how you can continue to iterate on that, improve it over time. Cool.
Yeah, and it's tried, tested, and true tactics.
We
we've
literally
done a lot of
yes.
websites this month.
You're currently working on about 11 or 12 of them, I think, something like that. So it definitely does. And I am the tracking guy. Yay. Me and Sashida and April. But first, we are going to dive right into what's new, and then we'll get into what's working. So why don't we kick that off? And Paige, we're going to run over this one.
Yeah, so this is a new feature that TikTok wants to do a lot for the younger demographic. So they've created a hashtag, TikTok resumes, and what they want users to do is kind of send in a little pitch about themselves and why they're good for the company that they're applying to. And I know a bunch of companies like Target, Chipotle, I think even McDonald's are in on this and supporting young users to kind of showcase their talents and creativity through a resume. So it's kind of stepping away from the traditional black and white resume on paper and just trying something new and innovative, which I think is really cool.
Absolutely. I think it's definitely a very Gen Z kind of move, but yeah. I think it's an interesting look into how people are interacting and how they're creating really, whether it's just like a micro brand, you could look at it that way, which is something I would suggest to anybody that's younger and looking to get into the workplace. Is your social profiles can really, you can create a micro brand for yourself. Like maybe you're not going to be Gary Vaynerchuk, but hey, you know what? If you have a loyal following, people that are following you, and you can use it as a great way to kind of break into the job market and get noticed in a noisy environment.
It's nice to showcase your personality too, right?
For
yes.
sure. Especially if you're going into like a content creation role,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can actually show that you have the skills to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a great way to showcase your talent.
Yeah, some people can kill interviews, but the hard part can be getting the interview because maybe you don't sound amazing on pen and paper, but once you do get an interview, you land it. So I think this is kind of nice to bypass that.
Yeah, absolutely.
True.
I love it. TikTok's doing some things. It'll be interesting to see what how LinkedIn looks at this, because I know LinkedIn stories have been rolling out for quite some time. They're definitely a thing. And so, all new media formats, embracing video and all that fun stuff. Cool. On the topic of social, we also have Facebook throwing around some hefty dollars.
Yeah, people are saying that that Facebook has kind of stayed in the background with helping out creators and whatnot, and that they kind of need to pump up their support in that way, and that's the direction that they're going through. And I think it's really important too, especially if you want to keep people on Facebook and if you want to target an even younger demographic, because Facebook is kind of seen as to be, middle age and above. So I think really supporting these creators is going to help a lot.
Yeah.
I
100%.
actually heard my daughter was listening to a Gen Z, like on YouTube. I can't remember. It was some influencer. Anyway, and they compared Facebook to Florida. In terms of,
Like
and I laughed.
retired
I kind of
people
chuckled.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
That's
I think
funny.
it's great that they obviously need to monetize this, right? So they need to kind of put like a carrot there to kind of incentivize these young creators to kind of continue to develop content for them, right? So
Absolutely. So just to jump back, Pippa's making a great comment. I remember someone applying for a job at Lego or somewhere, and they sent us their resume in Lego bricks. Genius. That absolutely. That's how you stand out. That's how you stand out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things about this, I think it's really important to kind of highlight is that it's a pitched battle for creators' attention between, TikTok's got their creator fund, which hasn't even it hasn't rolled out in Canada, I believe, because of Bill C-10. Is from those are some of the rumors. But YouTube obviously monetizing like crazy, as is Facebook. So, creators should be incentivized more and more to participate in the revenue share of these massive platforms that rake in billions of dollars in profit, every quarter. So
exactly. So you get your foot in the door by doing TikTok resumes, and then you go to Facebook and you join their like incentivized program, and boom.
And there you go. Okay, moving right along. Zippity zippity zip. Messenger launches Soundmojis to add another element to your reply.
Yeah, so April and I were having a lot of fun testing these out this afternoon, and it's a new feature that they've added to Messenger. They said it's kind of in response to TikTok in a sense, because more people are getting used to expecting sound, it becoming more three-dimensional in terms of content. So they're thinking that eventually brands will actually leverage these sound emojis and actually pay Facebook money to own a certain sound. So for instance, I'm going to do a really bad Cardi B impression, but they have one that's like a macaroni, bowl macaroni, and you hit it and it's her going macaroni in a pot, right? So, or they have a calendar one, and it's that Rebecca Black song Friday, which I then proceeded to send to Yvonne because he loves that song. But I think it's great. It's a lot of fun, and it's really easy to get to. You basically just go to where the emojis are, and right beside where it would prompt you for a GIF, there's like a little sound icon, and you can find them there.
Yeah, totally. And I think this is just kind of a next level of bringing audio into all of the messaging experiences. More features give more opportunity for marketers. You could think of custom sounds for your own business. You could get really creative with this kind of thing. And one of the things I think, this was a comment page that you had made, and Stacey as well, is that I think this notion that Facebook is for old people is really inaccurate. We actually see huge amounts of engagement from an 18 to 24 demographic on Facebook. Now, it may not capture nearly as much of the attention as, say, a TikTok does, but Facebook is definitely shifted to being quite a bit of a communications tool, as opposed to necessarily the social network where you go through what you would traditionally think of as the news feed, right? So. But definitely interesting to see how Soundmojis work out. Emojis are important. They're important because, well, they're a standard, right? They're actually icons. They're it's a font. So we'll see how this picks up. But I think also this is a little bit of everybody's kind of chasing after TikTok right now.
They really are.
Really?
Yeah. Like I would prefer to watch TikTok over, I don't know.
I prefer it over TV.
Yeah, me too. I was going to say cable, but then I was like, maybe that's going to make me sound really old.
I think it depends on context when you're talking about social, right? Like TikTok is like grabbing a snack. and then eating a whole bag of chips, for example, right? Like you just you get into it. I think YouTube has definitely much more of a sustained audience retention, right? Like 8 to 10 minutes for videos. I consume a ton of YouTube content across the board all the time, just in a slightly different way. It's really interesting to see the growth of TikTok, and TikTok is still a fraction of the size of Facebook, but every time TikTok's doing something, all the other guys are starting to pile on, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that kind of goes into our next What's New article regarding some of the updates that the chief, I think it was, I have it here, chief of advertising had mentioned.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So they're going to focus on 4 key areas, these being enhanced privacy technologies. Well, we saw that coming with all the updates between Apple and Google. Product and business discovery. What I really like about this one is that if you are searching for a particular, let's say you're going away on a trip and you aren't familiar with the area, it will give you recommendations on like restaurants you may want to go to or local attractions to that. So it kind of helps you have that seamless experience when you're doing your research. E-commerce, this is really going to, like, it's always been there, but it's just going up another level. And I love how they're going to be adding, and they started to test this out, a local business tag. So let's say you're on Instagram or you're on Facebook, it'll actually say this is a local business. And with the advent of COVID and everything, a lot of people are really stressing that they want to shop local. So now you can do that easily. So,
yeah,
you know,
for sure. I think this, in a large part, this to me screams e-commerce is really what.
Very much so.
That's where their sites. They've been pointing down sight at this for a long time, talking about Facebook Pay, discoverability. That's an Amazon target right there. As they're looking beyond the ad revenue being such a huge part of their revenue stream, right? So anything you see in here is really centered around that fact of diversifying their revenue streams. And so e-commerce is going to become a huge thing. I can see it happening already. They've pretty much said it, so it's not like I'm divining anything from a crystal ball. But some interesting things. I think some of this stuff will be good for businesses, especially small businesses with smaller budgets. One of the challenges that small budgets have is just, how can I target my audience properly? You can always check out, what was it, a live ago or 2 lives ago? Did we do audiences, Facebook audiences?
I think it was 2.
Yeah. So you really want to dig into Facebook audiences and the pixel tracking in your first party data, and then leverage these new tools that are going to allow your business to really connect with a targeted audience, because then you can incite activity and action out of them.
Exactly. There was actually this funny TikTok that actually relates to this article, where it's this gentleman that I follow that kind of talks about trends, digital trends and marketing. And he has this clip of, like, it's in black and white. And what was marketing like back in 1985? They're like, well, we'll have, 3 magazine ads and a radio spot. And then they go to like today, and it's like, we're going to do customer journey mapping. We're going to have a persona. Then we're going to lead you into a Facebook funnel. And they just, it's totally different.
Completely different.
It's totally different. It just goes to show like how much, whether Facebook's old, young, merging, whatever, how it's really impacted how we address one another, right? So I think it's just with all these new updates, it's just going to be optimized even further and become more and more part of our day to day.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what I think fundamentally what this does is that, like, marketing is psychology when it comes down to it, and it's tooling, and there's all sorts of stuff. But at its kind of most meta level, it's psychology. It's like, do you understand your customer? Do you understand their problem? Can you provide a solution? And the beauty about what, my mom was in traditional advertising in the 80s, and I know that everybody that was there at that time was wishing that they had the capability to connect with people the way that we do now. So these are some pretty fantastic tools that businesses can take a chunk out of, I guess.
Exactly. I don't even know how they measured conversions back then.
They didn't.
Yeah, I mean,
They didn't.
Like, how would you know? Be like, I guess it's working.
Well, they literally what they do with billboards. They used to. I think now they've gotten far more empirical, at least in the delivery. Is if you had a billboard on the Gardner Expressway, they would measure the estimated amounts of traffic during those times of day for your run, and say you're going to get that many impressions, and that would be the extent of it. Yeah.
So then you hire all your friends to go drive down the Gardner Expressway.
Yeah, it's not like, will you like my post? It's like, will you drive past my billboard?
Exactly.
Oh, April's saying it's amazing how much marketing has changed and how powerful tools can be. Absolutely. So Yvonne is saying with YouTube, you can actually watch entire films. So it's almost like a TV in a way. It's what we would call an OTT video experience, or over the top, where you don't need the cable, right? So, but YouTube's key differentiator, and no one has yet to crack it, is the fact that anybody can go start their own channel. That's really it's minted hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millionaires. So.
Oh, I know. My daughter introduced me to the wonders of Brian Mondo. Now I'm watching girls go from like red to bleach blonde.
Okay.
While they work out in the morning.
I'm not that demographic. All right, Google Ads optimized targeting is gradually rolling out. So basically what this is it's a longer learning cycle for discovery, search, video, several other formats. And really what it is, it's going to be enabled. You have to change your ad group settings if you want to disable it. What this is actually going to do is try to find people outside of your so better audience expansions, right?
But they also warn it within that article that if you have not such a big budget, you maybe want to be a little bit cautious with this piece, right?
Yeah, you always want to be careful when the AI takes over and watch your bid capping and things like that, and but also be willing to let it learn, right? So there's an investment there. So, I mean, eventually the goal here, what they're saying, is to find advertisers cheaper conversions that might be outside of their perceived audience. So this is actually not a bad idea. I do think that one of the problems that advertisers run into is this notion that they know their audience. And I think I think you got to test outside of your audience as well, and get those learnings down pat.
Yeah, because you could be completely off. Like, I remember one campaign way back that I did where we thought it was like 60-year-old men. This is before I was at Honeypot, and then through some learning, we learned that it was actually 35-year-old women that like to kayak and wear sparkly clothes. Like, it's crazy. Like, you really don't know.
Completely
it's so
different.
Test and learn.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. Well, that wraps up what's new for this week. So let's dive right in to what is working. Oops. There we go. All righty. So building an effective website and designing and building an effective website. So one of the most important things to keep in mind is that there's a standard operating procedure to this type of thing. The worst thing that you can do if you're thinking about doing this, and you've got lots of options. We're going to talk about WordPress, but look, Squarespace is there, Wix is there. They're not necessarily the greatest, but what they have done is they've kind of democratized a lot of things, especially for smaller businesses and for businesses that are really looking to say, hey, our digital footprint really isn't effective. So, we know that people live and work online now. And that's one of the benefits of the pandemic, I guess, from the work from home perspective, is that the embracing an acceleration of all of this. But what I want to warn people against is just diving right in and just starting clicking buttons and starting to put stuff together without really starting with, like, before this whole process starts. We've done tons and tons of lives on this. But you really want to start with the why, right? Like, what are your goals? What does your user want? What are they trying to achieve? Understanding the before and after state of your customer. So what is their pain point and how do you solve that problem? Right? That's the one of the most important things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, Wix and tools like that, they definitely serve their purpose, but you have to have a good understanding of the fundamentals. So it's not just even about the customer journey, but just so that when you're creating the page, like I've seen so many Wix sites where there's not even a page title, or it's just, you know, it's not optimized even remotely correctly. And so I think, you know, this will help everyone understand what those basic fundamentals are, starting with the customer journey and what people are actually searching for, and then we can go from there. It's not about it. Oh, a lot of people also make this mistake. Well, they'll be like, okay, well, what color do you want it to be? Why are we even talking about color? Like, who's the customer? Who's the audience? Like,
we want boats.
Oh, don't even. Don't even.
Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. That's just an inside joke. You want to create those personas. We've dug into this plenty of times, but it's super important to understand your customers and understand that. Do a competitive analysis, and he's doing what your competitors are doing online. Justin's saying no more boats. They're so freeing, though. Yvonne's saying you can't build a house on a leaky foundation. Yeah, quoting Stacy. Yes. And one of the things here too is understanding where your customers work and play. And when you start to define that content, and we're going to go through this process, is right from your customer's perspective and not your perspective. Don't tell everybody how great you are. Tell them how great you are at solving their problems.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Cool. So this is where you begin. You can write this down on a piece of paper, do a one-pager, and really try to just get that, and then slap it on the wall right in front of you, or give it to your web designer.
Well, and like kind of going back to what you were saying before, marketing is about psychology. So you need to understand the motivations of this customer. And that's why we do a lot of Myers-Briggs, you know, personality testing, because what's going to trigger that emotional response? Ask yourself that before you do anything.
Yeah, there's a great video by Noah Kagan, who was like employee number 32 at Facebook. He was the CMO of Mint, if you're familiar with them. Intuit bought them for $200 million. He's got a great video. If you search it up on YouTube, you probably just search Noah Kagan Mint, it'll come up, and what he did there with a very limited budget. But one of the things was his interview my customers, learn about my customers, talk to my customers. So the more you know, right? And I think what happens with businesses that we have done work with on this front is there's an assumption that they know the customer better than they actually do, without actually sitting down and having those conversations. So you know, and if it's an easy process to ask a few questions at the right time, and I think you'll learn a lot.
Yeah, it's like any project, you have to think of the end goal and then kind of work backwards. Like, how are you going to get there? And it's a lot of homework and steps to get to that point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point.
100%.
Okay, next step that you're going to want to consider here. Now, this is an example, and I'll probably throw something up, of information architecture. So this is kind of like the blueprint for your home before you start construction. Again, if you Lucidchart, Draw.io, they both have free plans. You can go sign up and use them. They basically put a little, it's basically Visio. You can draw boxes and lines. I've done hundreds of these, thousands in my life. But the really important part here is that you want the site structure to make sense. And I can even show everybody an example here of mapping out the customer journey into your services and then into your personas, and giving it all a flow that makes sense. And it starts at this highest level. Okay. The other important part about information architecture is the simple fact that you need to rank in Google search, primarily Google. I mean, People always snicker when I say Bing, but you know, they're there too. But this information architecture side, if you can see that a little bit better, is just by mapping this out, you're going to give yourself an idea of where and how you want to define your products themselves so people can dig in, your solutions. Do you have professional services, right? Do you want to have a resource center? Are you going to have lead magnets in here? This is a pretty simple one just for brevity, but start here. And that information architecture, if you do it properly and you continue to create content, will help you on the search engine side of things. So you're going to get your search engine optimization done while you go through this process, not leaving it for after. Okay. And the basics of SEO are not all that difficult. Like, you don't have to be some wizard to do it. You got to write good titles. You got to have good content. You got to have good descriptions, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I'm just going to throw out my wand now. Gotta have to be a wizard. But yeah, and I think too, we should also mention about the importance of cornerstone content pages. I know we're going to get into content, but like that should, like, what are those key cornerstone pages going to be and where do they lie? So that way, when you're mapping it out, making sure you're linking to supporting those pages, right? So
yeah. So I'll just toss something up for fun. A much younger me.
Oh, look at you.
Baby face.
Yeah, totally. Wow.
So this was me speaking in Vegas at a iGaming conference, and you can see this gigantic TV wall behind me, and the title was "The Black Magic of Search Engine Optimization." The first thing yeah, I know there was like 5,000 people there too.
I love it.
The first thing I did when I got up stage is I pointed at that and I said, I don't know who wrote that title, but there is no black magic in search engine optimization.
Look at you being witty. Awesome.
I'm trying to be there. It actually got a laugh.
Yeah. Well, I would warrant one.
Okay. So we've got basically what is a sitemap laid out. And the next thing you want to do is start, and again, look, you can do this on pen and paper, right? Is create those wireframes that are going to have a basic layout of the page, and you can start to certainly build content in based on that framework and plan, and then expand it a little bit later. You should technically wireframe the template. Like, you should wireframe everything. But typically what we do is we work with different types of templates. And the reason being is that a product page will have a similar format for all products. A services page would have, a specific layout that you can certainly replicate and save time and be efficient and be consistent.
Exactly. Like, you have to have 100 products. You're not going to make 100 wireframes. You make one product page that is consistent. And there's also value behind that too, because as a user, you'll always know where to find the checkout button. You'll always know where to find, the product description by having that consistent look throughout your site. So
yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing too to keep in mind in this process, whether you're thinking of doing this yourself or hiring somebody to do this for you, is you don't want to go through a massive design cycle, present it to your client, and then have them say, what is this? This is nowhere near what I was expecting. So by creating this transparent process, even in your own design process, if you're creating visuals and layouts at this point in the process, you're way too far ahead of yourself. Because you may lose all that work, whether you look at it and go, that doesn't serve the purpose, or what am I actually doing here? What am I trying to say, right? So those wireframes will give you that chance. And again, if you're doing this for someone else, or if you've got an agency doing it for you, you have that. So let's take it from the client perspective, right? If you are reviewing an information architecture and then a series of wireframes, and you can put them all up on the wall, and you can redline them, you can mark them, you can say, this is part of my brand, this is what I want to say, this is what the design process hasn't started yet. So you're being very efficient with, by the time you get to that design process, you're in production. And that's an important point to make about efficiency. There you go.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
Yeah. And like, also first of all, I've done wireframes. I've done it on a napkin before. Like what Dan said, you can do it on anything. As long as you have a pen and something in front of you, you can do it. And just like what Stacy was saying, you're not going to make 40 of them for one website, but a good wireframe is kind of like the basic setup for all of your other pages because you want them to be cohesive, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Those are great points. Great points. Okay, so now we've got our information architecture, we've got our mockups, we've got our wireframes. Now you can start mocking up. Okay.
And it should be noted, we're like on the 5th point before we get to this.
Is that good?
I think so. I think a lot of people start here though.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. You know?
So
yeah, for sure. No, that is a good thing. Yeah, and you want to you want to do mockups. You can do, so there's a couple of things. We're going to talk about frameworks. So we prefer Elementor. There is Divi, there's Beaver Builder, there's WP, there's a ton of them. Elementor is just one of the most fully featured. And again, I also want to distinguish that when we're talking about this, we are talking about business marketing and e-com sites. Product sites that are custom coded are a very different animal, a different beast altogether. These are really what we're trying to do here is create a website that is user-friendly and understandable enough for non-technical people to be able to get into the site, to be able to make the changes they need to make so that they are not dependent or codependent on anybody technical in order to do that. Yeah. Right. So with Elementor, quite often what we are able to do is we have templates. So as we design so many things. So we, for example, have a template for Cornerstone content. So we can quickly insert a template that has a chapterized version that you can go in and then you can customize from there. I know Justin, our creative director, prefers Illustrator for doing some of these creative mockups. And again, the client can look at the web palette, they can look at some of the language now. And again, you're getting that evolutionary process that's much more interactive on a project rather than saying, I'll be back in 30 days with your website.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any tips on mockup creation page since that's your
well, like you said, Justin does it all in Illustrator, and since I've been here, he's kind of made me an Illustrator girl. I used to do everything in InDesign, but it's also nice because when you're doing a mockup, you can still have filler text and whatnot, and there's going to be some revisions and some edits and changes if you're presenting to a client, but it's nice because, like Dan said, it's not the actual website, so it's very easy to change and to do alterations and whatnot too. And it's also fun as well because, you can kind of see your whole layout and it kind of maps what your whole site is going to go off of.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, by the time you're working on your platform, we'll use WordPress as the example, you should primarily be in production mode at that point. Right. You shouldn't be struggling with, what color should my buttons be. Right. You got to define that before.
And if your brand already has brand guidelines, you can use it as a jumping off point too, which will help probably expedite the whole process because then it's going to be consistent with all your other marketing materials.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. Jetting right along here. So at this point, you've got information architecture, we've got wireframes, we've got mockups. They can be sliced and diced. On the other side, our more technical team, will begin setting up the staging servers and the production servers and doing everything else. And one of the most important things is that you do have a modern platform called managed services. If your web developer is saying to you, well, I'm heading over to Amazon to spin up an Amazon AWS instance, and you're like, okay, whatever, that sounds cool, whatever that is. I guess you put websites on Amazon, don't you? Don't do it that way because that's effectively what's called bare metal. It's like you're going to spin up a server, then you got to do all this configuration. And it's not that complicated, but it's technical enough that it's beyond the grasp of a lot of people. Yeah. What we would suggest for most businesses is our tools like WP Engine. Kinsta is a really good one. If you are on kind of an independently hosted service, you can bolt on blogvault.net. And what these managed services do is they create an interface for setup and administration and backups and security and patches and all of these things. In my mind, WP Engine's probably a little bit more expensive. I believe it starts at like $36 a month. Like, this is your business website, right? So $36 a month is nothing compared to the fact that you get nightly backups that can be restored with one click, right?
Yep.
That there's security built into it, that it has a content delivery network. Basically, and the analogy I like to use for this is, if you're going into your business and you're hiring someone and they're setting up an AWS server and doing all of this stuff, it's a lot like opening up a restaurant and saying, you know what? I am going to create the world's greatest restaurant inventory and order system ever in the history of restaurants, and focusing all of your efforts there, as opposed to the menu, the ambiance, your customers themselves, right? This is a build versus buy thing. And practically for almost all businesses, again, this is not for everybody. I'm talking about for most common businesses. Do you really want your IT team? Like, if you've got, I don't know, if you're in shipping and logistics, you've probably got complicated IT systems. Do you want your IT team that's managing the logistics side of things to be worrying about the fact that a WordPress plugin has a vulnerability and it needs to be updated? No, right? So this is why investing a little bit into this managed services hosting is both, one, very easy, and two, it'll let you sleep at night. And you'll also be able to learn how to kind of manage it yourself if you were so interested. Right?
Yeah, it's the whole work smarter, not harder piece, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So on that side of it, this is the step where that all gets set up, because you're just in that pre-development stage. You're getting ready to get everything set up.
Yeah.
Then we go into, now we're going to start getting things set up. And I did want to throw one thing up here quickly, since we're, being all transparent and such.
Yeah.
So here, okay. So here's our lovely 79 step. This is the basic guide to website setup and development. Can make a copy of this available. There's a couple of things here just on our workflow and process. I use it's an app called Local, and what Local does is it allows me to set up site templates on a local machine with all of the plugins and everything that's installed. It's all ready to go, right? It's like a vanilla. It's like, boom, here's the foundation of it. Can push it into a development site, and within 30 minutes, it's handed over to Justin and Paige and the rest of the team to begin working on it. These are the types of efficiencies, because this alone in the setup portion, I could take a couple of hours, right? And if you're trying to be efficient with it, you can get it done a lot more quickly. Okay, so that web dev checklist is super duper important. But part of this here is where we start to use page builders and frameworks. So like I said, Elementor is one type of page builder and framework. And the reason being is that, there's a lot of criticisms that a lot of websites look exactly the same, and I don't necessarily disagree. But what Elementor can do, and here's a little bit of a view of Elementor. We've got libraries, we've got widgets, we've got entire page templates, we've got entire section templates that we can then customize, and we can also export and import. So if we've done some design work that is reusable, we can take advantage of that fact and then customize it as well. This ensures that even, well, I wouldn't say completely non-technical, but you can go in there and click, and it is what you see is what you get, so people can update content. And that's the power that page builders give you.
Yeah, 100%. It makes it's actually so easy, but I would say it's kind of fun too. They make it really interactive, and it's not hard to pick up. Like, you don't need to know how to code.
No. If I had to know how to code, I'd be gone, because I'm not a coder. But yeah, with Elementor, it's great because it's good for beginners, but there's also a lot of intermediate things you can do on there with widgets and whatnot. And every day that I've been designing these websites lately, I'm learning something new every time I go into Elementor, which is really nice because I don't think you'll ever really get bored of it. There's always new features and whatnot.
Yeah, and Elementor also has some extremely advanced features as well. It's got great integrations with things like the Yoast SEO plugin, which is an extremely popular search engine optimization plugin. It's a huge, massive time saver. They also have a ton of resources. Like, there's nothing on their in their tutorials that you can't find. They got a massive YouTube channel, great tutorials. Oops. So there's lots of that and a big community around it. So it's a solid choice for a page builder, but page builders in general will save you just a ton of time. So that's the reasoning for that. And again, we want to accelerate the process in the sense of being able to be efficient where it's most important, right? In terms of understanding the customer journey, as opposed to trying to get my float CSS code proper for mobile breakpoints.
Yeah. Like, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it just, you know, you want to make sure that it's going to work, but you also want to be able to make changes on the fly really quickly. And if you've custom coded and you've done all the CSS work and blah, 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 it's going to make it really difficult for you to make those changes like moving forward. And should also mention, a website is a living document. It's a living piece of marketing. Like, it's not just like, oh, I made it and I'm going to walk away from it. Like, you're constantly making changes. So using something like Elementor is just going to make your life a lot easier in the long run.
Well, and that's
worthwhile investment.
Yeah. So the famous one, the famous answer to the question is like, when will the website be done? The answer is, when is fashion done?
Yeah.
Like, never. You should always be. And I think philosophically, it's incumbent on businesses to really think about it this way, is that don't treat your website as this static billboard that just sits there and you haven't updated it in a year. You're missing out on so much potential business. And this is where we're at the content side, which is not only content development. I mean, there are blog posts, there are cornerstone contents, there's lead magnets, all the stuff we talk about. But the content on your site itself should have a dynamic flair to it that should have almost like a living entity around it. Okay.
Yeah, please don't write paragraphs and paragraphs of copy on your site. Like, it needs to be you got to think of usability, right? So you have to think, is it going to be easy for my customers to find what they're looking for? Can I get the points across in bullet points and just use strong header structures so that way it's easy scannable material to review? Because people don't want to read, like, unless you've got a dedicated area for blog posts where you can get a little bit more verbose, but you still want to kind of keep that same kind of bullet point form structure, so that way all your content, it's scannable, it's informative, and it makes it your customers' lives, or the user,
quick and easy.
Easier.
Yep. And you want to, this is where the customer journey comes in, is you want to provide the key benefits to your customers that will solve their pain point at the first touch, making it really easy to scan, designed for mobile first, not last. And then what you want to do is create a journey that lets people that are interested complete that journey and dig in to get that information if they want to. Don't put walls up in front of that. So when we say be brief and for scannability, that's at the top of the funnel. You also want to consider lead magnets and additional content for someone that does want to dig in. This here that I've got up on the screen right now is one of the templates that we use for these types of things. Now, this one is several years old now, so it's fine to show. But we had written 1,200 to 1,500 word pieces of cornerstone content. And in order to do that, we actually broke it down. You can see your point 1, point 2, point 3. So you're writing in this format that works for a website, right? That works for the typical style that you're used to. And it helps you it prevents you from writing these massive walls of text and writing in a scannable point form.
Yeah, like if you want to share a white paper too, like you can dedicate a section of your site for that. You may even want to consider gating it so you get some emails out of that experience. But one way or the other, you can make a section for that, for like what Dan was saying, for people that want to dig deeper. But when you're initially creating that site, you just want to make sure that it's readable, it's scannable. I can find what I'm looking for within like 2 clicks. Like you gotta just keep it simple.
Yep. And in terms of developing your content, you can see there's 2 streams happening here. There's the design side of it, right? And then there's the content side of it. They will then converge. And that is where you are now in the site, putting it together and assembling all of that investment and work and time you did before is now paying off, because you are now in that production side of your website development and that process. Okay. So it should smooth things out. And with the typical kind of regular reviews, nothing would be surprising in the scope of that entire project. It's really important. And this is something that I truly believe in. I actually just wrapping up a social strategy for a client. And one of the things they said was we did a weekly update. It's a little messy. It's a little unorthodox, very unorthodox, because the strategy is not done. It's a thing that's developing. And so we jump around and we do all these things, but it gave visibility into the process from the beginning of the process to the end of the process, right? And they actually ended up saying they very much enjoyed that part of the process, being able to contribute to it and give feedback on it and chop it up and know that everything started converging towards, by the time that final thing is presented, just like a website, you already know what it's going to be. So kind of final presentation is really a wrap up and a review, right? It's not this big surprise. Okay. We've already gone through all that. We're going way over here. This one's important, near and dear to my heart. Data integrations, people. Do not copy paste things. Do not import. Do not record them into a spreadsheet and then email them to your people or whatever it is. We live in a world, and Paige kind of highlighted it very well in point 2 here, which is what are called codeless integrations. There's a big movement out there in the technology world for Webflow is a codeless platform as well. For site development, it's becoming extremely, extremely popular. But what codeless integrations do is it allows you to connect any 2 systems that will support it, which a lot of them do. And an example of this is called Zapier. There's Integromat. There's Phantom Buster. There's a whole bunch of them. Your mileage may vary, but this is so important in terms of creating that customer journey, because if you can't connect the data, you don't have a customer journey, right? Yep.
I should also mention, I think a lot of people would kind of get intimidated when they hear data integrations. Using Zapier is actually quite easy. They make it really user-friendly. Like you have to understand what you're doing in terms of the path that you want and how you want everything to connect. But overall, it's not, I wouldn't say it's as scary or as intimidating as it might appear.
No, and I've taught several non-technical people how it works. It's really quite simple. You've got a bunch of fields on one platform. You're going to have those same fields on the other platform. You just tell Zapier, I need this one to go here, 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 and let the Zap do its thing. So yeah, like one of the things you definitely don't want is if, you've got inbound lead inquiries or appointment bookings, you definitely don't want to forward an email that you got notified from the website that there's a lead that goes to your salespeople. Then your salespeople have an email, and then 4 days later they get to it, but they can't, they forgot or something happened. These are all things we want to avoid, and data integrations are one of the most important parts and pieces of these puzzles. So don't just do your website and say, okay, it's done, I got the thing. I mean, you need a customer relationship management system. You need a marketing automation platform in order to make this stuff, like MailChimp or Zoho or ActiveCampaign. CRM would be like Pipedrive or Salesforce or something. These are all things that can make or break businesses on the internet. Okay. And then lastly, as we start to wrap this up, and I think we're like, is it 5:15?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we'll wrap it up. This is important. So you saw that in the setup, there's a setup checklist. This is also a quality assurance and testing checklist. There are a lot of little details that people miss, like forgetting to unblock search engines so that your site can index. Like I've seen it all. And so you want to, we'll update this checklist a little bit and actually give it out. I think it's important. These QA checklists will save you a ton of headache and heartache. And you definitely want to do it before a site goes live. You make all those announcements. Yeah. All right. So now we talk about the marketing side, which is really the stuff we do. Like we almost always work on the marketing side with our clients and after a site design. So that's always kind of the end goal. So for your launch and your marketing, you definitely want to make sure you've been doing your SEO the entire time. You want to get yourself submitted to quality directories, and there's hundreds and hundreds of them. Those are called citations for local businesses. Some email marketing, connect with influencers. This is all the stuff that you can do quickly once you've got your shiny new website that you should be thinking about doing either all of these things or some of these things.
Do all the things.
Do all the things. Why not?
Why not?
All right. So that is the 11-step process to create an effective website. I got nothing else, guys. I think that we nailed it. We did it. Or ladies. I'm sorry, I said guys. It's 2021. It's a habit.
I'm a lady.
All right. Well, we hope that you found that informative and helpful. At the very least, you got a peek into our process here at Honeypot Marketing. But we think that this is a solid process for pretty much anybody, whether you were doing it yourself or if you're talking to an agency and you want a little bit more clarity into the process. Cool.
Exactly.
All right, Ms. DeSantis, you are on vacation.
I'm on vacation.
It's all right. We'll call you like 12 times a day.
I know.
No, we
Don't get too comfortable.
I don't think I've called anybody on vacation in like 3 years, unless it was an absolute emergency.
No, you've never called me on vacation.
No.
No.
I don't jam that way. I don't vibe that way.
Yeah.
All righty. Yvonne, great live. See you next week. Thank you, sir. All right, everybody. So we'll see you next Friday. Ooh, who's going to be on me? We'll have to get April on.
Yeah.
We will see you next week for episode 188 of Live at the Hive, Digital Marketing from the Trenches. Same B time, same B channel. Peace.
Bye. Peace out.